But having the owner of your publication or of your media platform go out there and say like, oh, I'm going to incorporate, this bias meter because my straight news reporters are not to be trusted. That's the messaging that's coming out here. Yeah, people are going to be upset about that.
Oh, what's going on here? Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks is having a go at the legacy media. In this case, who else but the LA Times, noted woke rag, which spews its leftist bile each and every day. Apparently, you heard what they said. They're gonna. Well, let's just let her get into it. I won't paraphrase. Let's just see what they have to say. It's going to be a good one, though.
Information that needs to be translated. And since 2010, we've been working with what I call augmented intelligence. So I'm now working with the team behind the scenes to create truly the AI version, but not AI in the sense of making up stories. But imagine if you can now take, whether it be news or opinion, and you have a bias meter.
Well, the owner of the Los Angeles Times, Patrick Soon-Shiong, announced his plan to incorporate artificial intelligence as a bias meter next to its articles and, if you ask me, weirdly, their op-eds as well. I say weirdly because op-eds are about opinion and they tend to be biased, but okay. Now, this idea stems from what he claims he wants to do in putting out balanced reporting. I think that there are some issues here. While I definitely am supportive of straight news journalism being fair, truthful, factual, honest, all of that, is the technology accurate? Is it going to accurately identify biases? It's interesting. Now, he made this announcement during an appearance on Scott Jennings's podcast. It's titled Flyover Country. And his staff is not very happy about this. So the bias meter will use AI technology that he himself has developed for his own healthcare business. And he wants to roll it out in January, meaning very soon. Here he is discussing.
Wow, now that's an interesting idea. LA Times owner plans to put AI bias meter on all articles. So a bias meter next to every article, that's actually kind of a cool idea, I have to admit. Now, of course, AI, well, you can, AI, first of all, is not reliable, as we all know. I've played with AI, of course. Maybe some of you have too. It literally says nonsense. I'm not saying everything it says is nonsense, but it will hallucinate. It will say things which are completely untrue, and then you tell it that something is untrue, and it goes, oh yeah, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. Thank you for correcting me. Here's the truth. But so you never know what's actually true. And then secondly, how is this AI going to establish the bias? Because don't you have to program it? Or people will say, well, you can't program AI. It's self-learning. The whole thing sounds very strange, but kind of interesting in a way that he wants to put him on his own articles or on the articles of his own newspaper. I can understand that. I guess that journalists would be annoyed with this, but it's an interesting concept. I don't even know what to think about it. I do want to see it though.
More.
But imagine if you can now take, whether it be news or opinion, and you have a bias meter. So that whether the news or opinion, more like the opinion or the voices, you have a bias meter. So somebody could understand as they read it that the source of the article has some level of bias. And what we need to do is not have what we call confirmational bias.
Right.
And then that story, automatically, the reader can press a button and get both sides of that exact same story based on that story. And then give comments. Now, I'm giving you some little breaking news here, but this is what we're quietly building behind the scenes.
No kidding.
And I'm hopeful by January we'll launch this.
So I can understand why the reporters would be upset about this. Number one, obviously, artificial intelligence is jeopardizing jobs, so there's that element to it. But I think it goes further than that. Listen to what he's saying. He's kind of making clear that he doesn't trust his own reporters, his own staff, to do fair, accurate reporting. And so if...
We already know they're not doing fair, accurate reporting. All mainstream media outlets are like that.
Like if Cenk was going around doing interviews and saying stuff like this, I wouldn't be happy about it, right? I'm doing my best. Obviously, I don't get everything right, and so I try to get things right. And if I get something wrong, I'll correct it. But having the owner of your publication or of your media platform go out there and say like, "Oh, I'm going to incorporate, this bias meter." Because my straight news reporters are not to be trusted. That's the messaging that's coming out here. Yeah, people are going to be upset about that.
Yeah, there's like 1,000 issues with this. The casual inclusion of yet more AI into this. I'm sure he'll stop at this though. That'll be it. They won't replace articles or editorials or whatever with it. So there's the inclusion of AI, the questioning.
You might as well replace these so-called reporters with AI, honestly. I think AI could just do a better job. And if it's the AI, if you can just push a button and AI will give you the opposite side of the story, the opposite viewpoint on it, then what's even the point of having the reporter in the first place? What's, in a way, that would be interesting. There's, certainly many articles on the internet, not necessarily at these major media outlets, but many articles on the internet are clearly being written by AI. And I bet some at the LA Times are already being written by AI anyway.
Of your own reporters. The weird tech person thing of taking, like even if this is a problem that you think needs to be solved, this is the only way, the simplest way we have to solve it is an AI button. Like if it's for your editorials, maybe list where the person works. That can provide a little bit of information. If they've worked in certain industries, maybe you list that. If they've served in different administrations, you could like be a human about it rather than a creepy weirdo that thinks that you need like a large language model to solve every problem. But that's the tech solution for literally everything. And then there's everything having to do with bias. Almost everyone, including very wealthy people, either don't understand what bias is or would have you believe that they don't. When they say bias, what is the only bias that they're considering? Left versus right or whatever.
Yeah, it's true.
That is such a shallow, boring, close-minded analysis of all of the various biases that can influence an editorial or a bit of reporting. Your personal life experience can influence it. Your age can experience it. Your work history can influence it. How about this? Like literally, who gets a chance to write an editorial for the LA Times is a form of bias. Now, you're not gonna be able to press the button in the LA Times to find out, because that would just, you press that and you'd find out that maybe he's the actual source of bias. So yeah, if you've worked for a defense contractor, you can easily get an editorial. If you're working minimum wage, you have literally no chance to even express your bias. There's so many, pro-corporate, pro-status quo bias. So the button's gonna recognize all of that. Mm-hmm. No, it's like, it's using AI to solve something that's not actually a problem, and then using it to identify things that don't even get to the most insidious forms of bias that do pop up in our media.
Yeah, let me actually point to an incredibly insidious form of bias that gets baked into what's supposed to be straight news, non-opinion reporting. You'll read a piece and they'll cite a source without disclosing the conflicts of interest that source may have in serving as a source in a particular story, right? So oftentimes this happens with think tanks. Think tanks have biases, okay? Yes, there are some nonpartisan think tanks out there, but if you are using a partisan think tank as a source in your reporting and you don't disclose that, that's a big problem. Right? Because you're kind of like passing this off as someone with authority, someone that actually has expertise and knows what they're talking about, but there might actually be a hidden agenda in the data or information they're sharing for the article or for the piece. And so I see that happen all the time, and it's super frustrating.
This is a very interesting thing. I have not come across this. Let me know if you've heard about this or something like this. This is the first time I'm hearing about this. I like this idea because to me, it just shows, this owner of the LA Times, he's been, like I said earlier, he seems to be showing that, what is he showing? We want to point out bias. And as Anna Kasparian's co-host there said, of course, there's many types of biases. There's the left-right bias. There's poor-rich bias. There's your background. Yeah, everybody's biased. Of course, we all have biases of all different kinds, obviously. Now, but if you're just doing factual reporting like newspapers are supposed to do when they're reporting a story, they're just supposed to report the facts. But even the facts you choose to report in a given story is a type of bias, and that's how legacy media, typically shapes their narrative, as we say. It's not by lying outright, but by either leaving things out, so lying by omission, or by simply quoting so-called sources, anonymous sources, which could literally, since they could literally be anybody, these anonymous sources, it doesn't matter what they say. So, in other words, they could just be made up, these so-called quotes from so-called sources. And therefore, they shape the narrative that way. They try to get a point across because the owners or the people above the owners want to get some sort of point or some sort of narrative across. They want to shape public perception overall. So, yeah, I find this whole thing very interesting. Again, I don't know what to make of it. I want to see it in action. I think it's interesting. I think it does show that most legacy media journalists are simply hacks. Sorry, they're simply hacks, and AI probably can just do your job for you. I don't say that to gloat. AI is taking over my job. In my day job, I'm a translator, and machine translation and AI are coming for my job too. I don't particularly like it, but if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. When the car was invented, it didn't take long for the horse and carriage in a business to suffer greatly. People still ride horses, but they don't ride them as their primary source of transportation anymore. It's a niche thing now, horse and carriages, horse and buggies. Same thing with the electric light. Yeah, it didn't kill off the candle industry or the oil lamp industry. Those things still exist, but their primary purpose is now they're a niche thing. They create atmosphere and ambiance. They're not used for wide scale lighting. So things are changing. But anyway, let me know what you think about this. I'd be very interested if any of you know more about this than me. So leave a comment under the video. I'd really appreciate it. And, like and subscribe, all that good stuff. In the meantime, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.